Welcome to the Top Knot Squad,
a podcast for the mom, parent, or woman who doesn't exactly fit in, but loves hard anyway.
Hosted by Naya, Adriana, and Alexis.
3 friends passionate about their beliefs
and unafraid to speak their minds.
Are you ready to laugh, be vulnerable, and keep it real with us?
Top knots are not required.
So in this episode of the Top Knot Squad, we're going to be talking about a pretty heavy topic. So trigger warning, we are going to be discussing the prevalence of gun violence in America and just kind of navigating that as parents in this world and how we talk to our kids. We know that there have been 23 mass shootings in 2018 alone. When we say mass shooting, the definition for that is 3 or more victims. That averages out to more than 1 a week. The news, schools, friends, neighbors, everyone is talking about it. So how do we address violence so prolific when parenting 2, 3, and 4-year-olds? What about older kids? So join us as we break it down and weigh in on the options to address these heavy topics with our littles.
Woo. That didn't warrant a woo. I'm sorry. I just didn't know. It was empty air. This is such a heavy topic. Okay. Where do we begin? How about, I think when we first had the thought of recording, the bombings in Austin were going around or going on. And all of us were very, the 3 of us were really kind of freaking out, I think. And
I think we were all on edge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we were just really heated and wanted to talk about it then, but the opportunity did not come about yet.
Yeah.
So,
and unfortunately,
once
that incident ended, there's been more.
Yes.
So,
which is crazy to think about because this is our 5th, we're recording right now our 5th and 6th episodes. Mm-hmm. So that's not, and we're doing 2 a month. So maybe 3 or 4 months in. Mm-hmm. And I think, since then we've had 2 really big, school shootings. Mm-hmm. And that's just too much. That's almost too much to process as parents, I think.
Mm-hmm. Especially with school-age children.
Yeah.
I can't. Whenever something, and I think we're going to go into this, so I hope I'm not getting ahead of us.
No.
But whenever something like this happens, I have to log off. I cannot be on social media. I cannot watch the news channels or even the regular news because I'm just inundated with these faces and I can't help but put my own kids and my family in that position. And it, I feel sick to my stomach just thinking about it. It's such a visceral reaction. I'm pretty sure, not to speak for you both, but I'm fairly certain it's the same for both of you.
No, yeah. And I mean, even before becoming a parent, I remember I was pregnant with Jack and Sandy Hook happened. And I could not believe that. I just remember being in the car and thinking, I'm going to be sick. Like, how did that happen?
I was home on maternity leave with a newborn Rory.
Yeah.
My oldest had just started a Montessori school and I left work early. I told my boss, I was like, I don't care. I have to go be with my child right now. Yeah. You can write me up, whatever, corrective action you have to take. That's fine. I can deal with it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I remember thinking in the car, I was like, this is it. Something big's going to happen from this. There's going to be big change from this. And, and then I think soon after that, the movie theater shooting.
Yeah.
And I was
Colorado.
Like, what? Mm-hmm. It's a movie theater, and then later, and more recently the church. And I'm just like, where the fuck can we go where we're not going to be shot at?
There's malls. There was in North Texas at Stonebriar Mall,
yes.
I think. There was a plot that some teenager was going to shoot it up, but they caught him before it happened. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't even fucking go shopping.
There was a military base at Fort Hood.
Yeah.
There's even just been workplace outside of children.
Yes.
There's been workplace violence as well. It definitely is increasing. I was reading a report from the FBI that since 2000, the data that they've collected, there's been a sharp rise in gun violence. So from 2000 to 2006, the average was 6.4 shootings annually, and that increased to an average of 16.4 shootings from 2007 to 2013. So that was the most up-to-date data from the FBI, even just until 2013. It's increasing at that rate. And here we are, 2018. And I'm sure if those numbers were looked at, it would be similar or worse.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys think that some of that is fueled by, like, would this still be happening if there wasn't such a heated debate, politically, where, like, what's the, I mean, it's not a theory, it happens every time that there's a mass shooting, gun purchases rise, it almost kind of fuels that, we need to go and get our guns before they're all taken away. Yeah. And I wonder how much of these shootings are happening more frequently because either one, I wonder if people or males mostly are more ballsy because nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a question I wanted to ask y'all. So when I was kind of researching a little bit about the numbers, the majority of homicides are committed by men. So when we're speaking about gender, it was like upwards of 90% of homicides, just in general across the board, are committed by males. And then there's even more data that exists suggesting that it's more white males. So then you add in race. And I think that often comes up in every time a shooting happens, that's coming up. And like the way that we're treating, like if it's a white male that's done the shooting, the way that we're treating them, the way that the media is portraying them,
for sure.
Versus if it were a person of color and how that, that person's automatically portrayed as a terrorist versus the white male. Yeah. Versus the white male there's a mental health issue involved. And so I wanted us to like talk just amongst ourselves even about like, what is the reason behind this? Is it related to toxic masculinity? Is it related to the concept that men have the power and need to exert that? And the messages that they're receiving about manhood, especially white males. Is it mental health related? Is it just access to guns? Like what do we think? I don't know. I know that's a big question.
All the things.
Yes.
I know, right? Yeah, that's it. That's the answer. Yes. I mean, God, this like blows my mind just trying to decipher, what could be the cause, what could be the answer. And I think, I don't know if we'll ever have, the answer. I just know that nothing's being done. That's my big thing. And I think part of it definitely would be, toxic masculinity. I have a really hard time with that word. Sorry. Yeah, I couldn't say that. And how we are raising our boys and how we are. And I'm trying to just wrap my head around this, obviously, because it's just so much information and so much, where are we going wrong? But there's also a lot of stuff going on the internet saying, putting blame on how we're raising kids, especially our generation specifically. I've been noting
like the entitled generation.
Yes, yeah, and that really frustrated me because, again, it goes back to that judgment in parenting or judging parents and how we are parenting, and I don't know what the right answer is to that. I can't.
I mean, I personally don't know that I can ignore that aspect of it. Like even our gender episode, to me, like that conversation is very much related to this conversation. And it seems so simple, and like people are like, you're overreacting, like you're looking too much into this. Like I even actually, you remember I sent y'all that ad. I won't call out the company.
Oh yeah.
But there was an ad at a restaurant that said
stereotypes.
Family night, beer for dads, wine for moms. And I took a picture and I actually sent it to the company. I messaged the company and said, I just wanted to point out to you that you're perpetuating these gender stereotypes, like not just men drink beer and not just women drink wine. And I've had people actually, because I posted that on my social media, and people were like, I think you're looking a little bit too much into it. And I'm not. Because that's part of the problem is those really small things like that's what's contributing to the messages being so ingrained. And it's related to even my work that I did in the schools around bullying. whether it's intentional or not, and it's like these subtle messages that we're not realizing that we're sending to our kids when we're teaching that men have power and control and are stronger and women need to be quiet and silent and more submissive, that contributes to a bullying relationship. Like any type of violence that's in a relationship is when there's someone with more power and it's not equal.
Just to add to that, it also leads to those issues where women, if a woman feels like she's having a heart attack, she'll be kind of brushed aside, like, oh, are you sure it's not just an upset stomach or stress?
Yes. Or you're a mental health
female, quote
mental
unquote.
Health. Yeah. But then, that, like, statistically, bullying leads to domestic violence relationships. And, you know, some of these numbers, actually, the mass shootings that we were sharing, they aren't just school shootings. So a mass shooting meaning 3 or more victims. Some of that is domestic violence related
absolutely
shootings.
Family and stuff like that.
Yeah. So to me, those two conversations cannot be had separate. Like,
I agree.
They're together, period.
And I think if you look at a lot of the shootings that have happened where it has been a white male that has committed the crime, and if you look at their history, there'll oftentimes be a history of domestic violence, or you'll have an ex-girlfriend or an ex-wife pop up and say, he was abusive and he pushed me around and I had a restraining order against him. There's some history there. So I completely agree with you, Alexis, that the two conversations cannot be had independently. They are very, very much intertwined.
Yeah.
Do you guys think any of it is innate, is in males? Like something that's naturally...
To kill people and to like shoot them down?
No, to be the aggressor, to be more aggressive than females. Because it has... I guess this would be a stereotype, but in the past, when women do kill, it's more a crime of passion. It's almost always a crime of passion than it is, you know, with men where it's premeditated.
Yeah.
And that's not typical for females.
I don't know. There was just one that happened at YouTube, I think, and it was the woman, I can't remember if she killed herself or not at the end of all of it. I hate that I'm like talking about this like it's just getting fucking groceries. I'm like, oh, she might have killed herself. I don't know, whatever. But it was definitely very much premeditated. And then there was another one that came to mind. Oh, it was that kidnapping event. It happened several years ago. It involved that astronaut, the female astronaut that was driving from Houston to Florida, or Florida to Houston. I can't remember, but it was all very much thought out. Like she had Depends so that she wouldn't have to stop to go to the bathroom, and she had all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, women definitely do have the premeditated part of it, but I agree with you there. The majority of what we're seeing are definitely not females that are doing it.
And even to speak to that, like a lot of domestic violence crimes I would not say are necessarily premeditated. They're in the spur of the moment.
Yeah, where there's someone's just so
and those are primarily committed by males. Like, yes, there is women are committing violence against men. That is a thing, but statistically, women are more likely to be the victim in that situation.
Yeah.
And so I would say a lot of those are crimes of passion, and that's a man committing that crime.
And oftentimes it's women and children.
Yeah.
And by like innate, I'm not saying, you know, that this is in a man, you know, to kill. I'm just saying that they're more commonly more aggressive. Like it's in them to be more aggressive, to be, because I mean, as much as we would like to say that across the board, males and females should be equal and the same, we're not. There are definitely things that females can do that males cannot, and the other way around as well.
I think part of the argument there, even just about like the term toxic masculinity, it kind of speaks to exactly that, in that when we're only like, sure, there might be some differences between males and females, but if we're only fostering that one side and we're not allowing them to also foster these other traits that can exist as a human being, like all human beings have the ability to be kind and empathic and compassionate. Like every human being has that ability, whether you're male or female.
But these are characteristics. I'm talking like physically. Because physically, there's going to be things that
You're
women...
saying because of like hormones like testosterone being higher and that being... I mean,
because there's... Our bodies are like different.
Stature?
And stature, strength, muscle. I mean,
I think yes and no, but I think it comes down to a nature versus nurture. Yes, there are some things that are naturally... Men are going to have broader shoulders than most women and so on and so forth. But I feel like that ability to harm others is not necessarily something that comes naturally. It's something that is learned or is taught or it is mimicked.
I totally agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. But I think that's where we were different, where you're talking characteristics. I totally agree with that. Personality traits and stuff, definitely that everyone does have a right to.
Well, you still, whether you are pumping more with testosterone or not, you still have the ability of choice.
No, and you're right. And I feel like, though, I'm going back to basics in terms of, physical anthropology and evolution and how, males
like
and
men are
females,
hunters like that.
not hunters, no. Just, they could be, but there's definitely tribes in our past that the women were the ones that were the hunters.
And there's still, matriarchal societies.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I just wonder sometimes if, there are, and it's not excusing it, but I'm wondering if men are just less in control and women are just so awesome we're more in control. I don't know.
I think yes and no. I'm kind of leaning more towards no, though. Just like that old argument with, you shouldn't breastfeed in public because you're going to tempt men. Well, men have some control over themselves, too. And I think not only does it come to, a baby feeding, but it can come to doing harm unto other people, too.
And this is all stemming from this Facebook. I guess this was someone's Facebook that I was reading. I don't know if you guys read it. It was a guy talking about right after the shooting in Florida that
Pulse, the nightclub?
No.
The school shooting in
the
Florida?
School shooting. Okay.
Yeah. And he was saying how he was being bullied, so severely bullied, and a bunch of guys followed him off the bus and followed him home, and to the point where they were like running around his house and trying to scare him. And he was so afraid and so angry at the same time that he went to go. He knew his parents had a gun and he got a gun. And this was a kid that was typically, he was a straight A student. He was honor roll. He was a good kid. But he was just so angry that these kids were bullying him and they were being so abusive, and he was so afraid. He went and got that gun and he was going to show them. And he wrote that. He's like, I was going to show them. He wasn't thinking beyond, I'm about to shoot them. I'm going to kill them and end their lives. His thought process was, I'm going to show them. And as he was running towards the door, ready to storm out and do something about that, his parents showed up, and the guys ran off, and he remembers thinking, if my parents had not arrived, I would have walked out and shot them all. And that was not the norm for him. So, and that's where that stems from, where I'm wondering how natural that would be for...
I almost am inclined to say that's also related to mental health. Because, male or female, if you're pushed to your breaking point, you're going to break.
And it might go back to, as like you said, gender in terms of how we are raised and how we are taught to see gender. A girl probably would beat herself up over it because that's what we're taught to do. And,
we're taught to be passive aggressive about how we're going to get back at them.
Whereas males are taught to stand up for themselves.
Aggressive.
Don't fuck with me.
Aggressive.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I also feel like at some point he must have known, or he must have seen somewhere, whether it was through his parents, through movies, whatever, that this is how you handle people that bother you. You shoot them. I don't think all of that would have come from himself. There's definitely outside influences that would affect that. So I think part of it, yes, it is definitely maybe in his nature to just kind of jump to that conclusion right away, especially if he's been pushed to his breaking point. But at the same time, he had to have learned that somewhere. I feel like maybe if it was a different person, a different male, he may have called the cops, or he may have turned the sprinklers on. I don't know, something else. Not quite as dangerous. That would still sort of send the message, but not injure somebody to that point.
Yeah. I think my brain is just continuing to go back to my work in the domestic violence field, and that even batterers intervention programs are teaching about gender roles and how that's contributing, because violence is a learned behavior. It can be unlearned. And so we're teaching men that it's okay to be aggressive. It's okay to hurt someone. It's okay to have control and power over someone. And that is absolutely contributing to their behavior. And that can be unlearned. And so in those intervention programs, that's part of what they're teaching them, is that you're more of a whole person than just these things.
Right. Makes sense.
I don't know. That's where my brain goes. But I also did that for a long ass time. So
I don't know. I don't know what I have to add to that. I don't have a good answer. Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody does, obviously. Which is why we're discussing this.
Yeah, exactly.
And related to that, I'm also seeing that I wrote a little bit about the mental health aspect of, you don't necessarily see women or girls with a mental health issue picking up a gun and going and shooting everybody. You don't necessarily see immigrants with their situation. I mean, they're being pushed to their brink and are likely experiencing trauma and some type of mental health. They're not picking up a gun and, shooting everybody. Those types of things make me go back to, this feels like it has to be a part of masculinity. Like that has to be playing into this. What are you thinking?
I don't know. I'm just thinking because the whole machismo thing is so entrenched in my culture. And you're right. They're not doing it there. Or if they are doing it, and my little world or my view of the world is limited to living in the Rio Grande Valley for 18 years, where it's predominantly Hispanic. So you get a lot of the things that are done outside of that where it's a mixture of races and you plug it in there. So I did see a lot of there was a lot of minorities shooting because that's what there was, so it's interesting to, but the machismo is just so heavy and so.
Yeah, I didn't mean that like that there's not violence amongst other people. Like there's violence across the board, period. But when we're talking about this issue and when mental health is brought up, I oftentimes think that it is like we're using that argument and not really looking at the whole picture because we're not using that argument in some of those other scenarios. Like when there's other types of violence going on, we're not necessarily going there, but for whatever reason, when it comes to these mass shootings, especially school shootings, that always comes up. There was a mental health issue, especially if it was a white person.
I see what you're saying.
Versus some other. If it was a person of color, then that argument isn't given. I don't know. I don't know the answer. I'm just like discussing it.
No, you're right. It's true. And that's where we usually go. And a perfect example of that, was a kid that I'm failing to remember the incident, but I'm remembering the kid, which is horrible because it's so frequent at this point. But everyone was saying he looks so normal after it happened. Was it the Austin bombing? Was that a young
Probably.
person?
Yes, it was.
That's what it was. It was because I remember I was talking to Jack's teacher and we both were just like in shock because we had just read, on Facebook or something, some random stupid, I shouldn't say stupid person, I'm sorry, but just some person was saying he looks so normal, like there's supposed to be a look too. And then someone else, I wonder how his poor mom feels. What? I wonder how.
I thought that one too.
Or I'm just like, I wonder how the poor moms feel of the dead people.
Yeah, or the guy's daughter who got blown up on his porch.
I know. I just could not believe that. So, yeah, I totally agree that there's definitely something.
Yeah. I don't know. I just wanted to open the topic and get people thinking, even the people listening, like thinking about this and why, because I think the debates around all of this are contributing to why nothing is being done.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, because it's like this never ending battle. And I mean, we're all wondering why, how, what, and there's all these conversations going on about it on all different levels. And it doesn't matter because we're still in the same spot.
Children are still dying.
Yeah. And the three of us are sitting here thinking, well, shit, our kids are starting school. How are we going to prepare them? And one of the things on my mind is, I have to mentally prepare to be crushed when Jack comes home in pre-K and tells me about their drill in case a shooter comes into their school. I don't want to do that. I don't even want to go there.
I had to have that talk with Ethan. And I was like, hey, do you do any kind of drills in school? He's like, yeah, we have a tornado drill. And we do this and we do that. I was like, okay, what other kind of drills? He's like, well, there's a drill that we do if there's a bad guy that comes. And I was like, well, like just talking about it now, I want to throw up. But he's like, yeah, the teacher turns off the lights and we lock the door and we put paper up over the window. And I'm going to cry as I'm talking about this.
I know.
But
I can't.
I mean, it broke my heart to hear my 6-year-old talk about what they do if somebody comes in to shoot them and to kill them and to hurt them. School is supposed to be this safe place for kids. It was a safe place for us growing up. We didn't have to worry about this shit. The biggest deal was a fucking fire drill and everybody getting excited about going outside for 10 minutes or whatever. I mean, I'm like, I don't know. Sorry, I can't talk about this. I'm going to cry.
No, I know. It's horrible.
It's okay if we cry.
I know.
Yeah, I know.
It's allowed.
Heavy time. We're going to have some boob cake after this.
Give the teachers more guns. That'll solve the problem.
I personally have had this internal struggle through all of this, like thinking about my kids going to school and having those conversations and just releasing them into this world that's fucking terrifying. But I have a few friends of color, and I think about them a lot and their experience and how it's different from me as a white woman, and how, like, outside of sending their kids to school for a school, like, they're terrified of just their child walking out the door. Yeah. And like living life through that lens. Yeah. I'm getting this small glimpse in this conversation about that, but they're having conversations about do this, behave this way so that you don't get shot for being black. How to handle
it if you get pulled over while driving. Yeah.
And I don't know, that's a random aside. But
you're right.
It's something that's always in the back of my mind of like this is real for everyone, no matter what, because we're all sending our kids to school. And it's a real fear and obviously a very real threat because it continues to happen. But even like just the stress that my trauma brain kind of goes there of like this constant state when you are constantly in a state of stress response and pulsing with cortisol, just the effects that it has on
so basically like how I am right now.
On your health,
Yeah.
I mean, it's... I don't know what I'm trying to say.
No, I think I get what you're trying to say. And please correct me if I'm not correct. But basically you're trying to say is what this little smidge of scariness that we white people and white presenting people are experiencing now is the daily reality of people of color. And it's been that way for a really long time. So possibly be a little bit more empathetic to what they may be saying and what they may be going through. And if you hear Black Lives Matter or something like that, it's not saying white lives don't matter. It's, again, is that kind of where you're going with that?
Yeah, no. And just like in general, like even in schools, like statistically, we know that Black and brown kids are disproportionately punished. And it contributes to like that prison pipeline. And like it's just like there's this whole other set of stressors and trauma that is being dealt with.
About.
I'm not saying like... Y'all are both women of color. I'm the only white person in the room. So I'm not saying that about y'all. I'm saying for me personally, it's something that is always on my mind that I'm thinking about. And so I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I think it's a point that's worth raising, though, that this may be something recent for some of our listeners, whereas other listeners have been dealing with struggles similar to this for a very long time and stressors related to just being who they are and being out and about in public.
And even just the solution of armed teachers, like it's not taking that aspect into account.
Exactly.
Like we're going to arm teachers and now we've put Black and brown children in more danger. And I don't know that we've made schools safer because they're being treated differently in schools. Yeah.
Yep.
No, I totally agree.
I mean, I hate to say it, I'm very proud of my heritage and my culture, but sometimes I'm really glad my last name is Weber. I'm not going to lie, especially living in the world that we live in today. And that both of my kids are kind of like, they're white presenting. You wouldn't think that they were Indian, either of them. So, yeah.
No, yeah, same for the boys. Their last name is Brockman. I'm still screwed because I'm a kid too, but they're Brockman. And I don't know. I feel like for Jack, we definitely struggled a little bit in the beginning. He he definitely doesn't look Latino now as much, but when he was little, he had really blonde, frizzy hair.
I've seen pictures.
Yeah, and someone actually asked me what he was. And I was like, what do you mean?
Child.
I know, it was really confusing to me because it was just the way it was presented. And then again, I was asked by someone else what his dad was.
Yeah.
And
that too. Oh, are you their mother? Oh, yes. I assure you, I felt every inch of that head passing through the birth canal. I am their mother.
I know, yeah. So it's just, and I'm glad that
microaggressions.
No, it's hard. And as much as I love that Galen is more my color, at the same time, I'm like, but whatever, we'll deal with that as it comes. And I don't know. I try not to think about it too much because it happens way too often for us. Like literally a couple months ago, someone asked or one mom told another mom to ask the nanny, and referring to me as Jack's mom, or in a situation with Jack involved, and I clearly heard her say, "Oh, I think that's his nanny. Go ask her." And I was like, "What?
Oh my god!
I got it.
I'm not the nanny."
It happened to me a couple of years ago. Like once we first moved into our really ritzy neighborhood, somebody knocked on our door, and she's like, "Oh, hi!" I was wearing a shirt that said "Mama Bear." Had my then baby like 6-7 months old on my hip. The other one came around. She's like, "Hi, is the boy's mother there?" Wearing a shirt that says fucking Mama Bear, lady. And I was like, "I'm their mother." And she's like, "Oh, the owner of the home." And I'm like, "I'm the owner of the home. My name is on the fucking deed. I'm held liable if there's no mortgage." But I get that a lot too. I've gotten asked if they're brothers. They are. It's just people think they can say the most ridiculous shit.
I get it on the other end too, though. It's really weird because at Gymboree there's several nannies, and they're all, I'm not sure where they're from. They're Latin nannies, and they always assume that I'm also the nanny, and they're my own people. And I'm like, what does that say about our culture? And just I don't know. I really lately have just been trying to close myself off to it because it's too much. And then with everything going on the border, it's really close to home for me. So,
yeah. Like I said, it's just unplug from social media.
Yeah.
It's just really, sometimes for self-preservation, it's the best.
I know. I just don't understand how people can hate one race so much.
I don't either.
It just blows my mind.
Me too. No human should be illegal.
I know.
That's a topic for another time.
Yeah, sorry. Tangent.
Maybe we should talk about how to have these conversations with our kids.
Yes, please.
Let's do it.
Which isn't quite as heavy as where we were going. So I know for me, like right after the Austin bombings, there was an article that was circulating about how to have these conversations with your kids. And it essentially was like discouraging parents from talking to their kids about it and more isolating them. And I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I didn't either.
I agree.
I mean, I understood that viewpoint and just kind of like developmentally where kids fall and how there's only so much that they can understand, and we don't want to cause them more trauma. And so we absolutely, as much as we can, should be limiting, the younger they are, limiting kind of like what images they're seeing, what information they're receiving, and being more in control of that. But as they get older, at some point, if they're in school, and they're going to be exposed to things no matter what.
Exactly.
And so we want to make sure that they're receiving accurate information.
Yeah. And I think that's true whether it comes to anything from, world events and scary events like this to, well, even sex and birds and bees talk and all of that.
Or loss, divorce.
Divorce, everything.
All of those difficult...
Mom and dad losing a job.
Yeah. Difficult subjects that I think there definitely is this idea of we need to shelter our kids and brush it under the rug, but eventually it's gonna come to the surface at some point,
or it's gonna backfire completely.
Yeah. It can, to me, it can lead to some later disappointment or confusion.
I agree. I totally agree. I don't think you have to give them the exact details of what happened. Just as an example, whenever I would pick my kids up after their school program and after work, we'd come home and they would run to the front porch and check for packages.
Same.
When the Austin bombings were going on, we couldn't do that. And we had to talk to them about, if we're on a walk and you see something strange, don't go near it, tell an adult, come back to us, all of that. And so I had to, with my youngest, obviously he was 3 at the time. So obviously we kept it really specific. Like you are not to pick up any packages you see. If you see anything that looks weird, tell mom or dad. That was it. Mm-hmm. With our oldest, we could go a little bit more in depth, and he's 7.5 now. So we had told him, look, there's somebody out there that really wants to hurt people. We don't know why, but it's happening here in Austin, and we need to be really careful. I don't want, and we told him, you just explicit, like that was the 1,000-foot view. That's as much information as he needed to know. Mm-hmm. And so what we told him that, and we're like, look, if you see any packages on the front doorstep, you need to tell mom and dad. If we're out for a walk and you see something in the street or you see like a wire, don't go near it. Come back and tell mom and dad, please. Mm-hmm. And so that was it. It's kind of the same conversation we have with him on snakes. Like if you see a snake, don't go near it. Tell an adult. So you don't have to go into explicit detail about what exactly is going on, just that somebody is out there that wants to hurt people. We don't know why they want to hurt people, but we want to make sure that you don't get hurt and that nobody in our family gets hurt. Mm-hmm. And that's as much as he needed to know. Was he a little freaked out? Yes. Mm-hmm. But so was I, and I'm his mother. And so I think explaining it to him that way was okay. And, when we told him, when you're at school and if you see something, like if you see someone's backpack there, I don't want you to pick it up to tell a teacher. I just want you to go tell a teacher that you found it or that you see it over there or what have you. I feel like they were actually giving him similar messages at school. They had an assembly while all of this was going on to address it. And again, I know. Just that 1,000-foot view of this should not be happening. If you see something that is not the norm, tell your teacher, tell an adult. And that was it. Mm-hmm. And so I do think that we can be a little bit more open and honest with our kids about what's going on in the world, but we don't have to be explicit with them. We don't have to give them too much information. There's such thing as age-appropriate information. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that is. And personally, I don't think there's really any guidelines for that because it depends on child to child, on how sensitive your child is, on how intuitive they are, on how with it they are. I know that with my oldest, he's a lot more sensitive than my youngest is. Mm-hmm. And so he picks up on things really easily. Like if my husband and I are stressed and having hushed conversations around them, he will know and he'll be like, what's going on? Is everything okay, Mom? Mm-hmm. Is everything okay? And so, I can't hide it from him. Mm-hmm. So I would rather be the one in control of the narrative and telling him what's going on than him picking up bad information from kids at school or hearing a snippet on the news or, whatever.
And you're going to know your kid best.
Exactly.
So despite any of the developmental guidelines, again, that's a guideline and every kid's different. Mm-hmm. And you as the parent are going to know their needs better than anyone else or than any book about development.
Yes.
And so trusting that too, letting that be a part of what leads you in that conversation, I think is important.
I think it might also be important to tell your child that, look, this is a serious conversation, so I need you to put down the tablet, the book, the toys, whatever they have in their hand and they're playing with so that you can have their undivided attention. Mm-hmm. And I think it's also important to let them ask you questions afterwards because I feel like questions kind of help them process the information that you told them, just like we ask questions after a lecture or, whatever. Mm-hmm. I think questions and answering questions as honestly as you can and as age appropriately as you can is also really important.
Yeah, I was reading a few things leading up to this, and basically I was seeing kind of a trend of the same tips over and over again. And one of those was like the biggest thing is to just find out what they already know, starting with some open-ended conversations of, have you heard about anything? Are people talking about something at school that you want to tell me about? So then that gives you information of what do they even know right now? And it helps you determine how much you feel like you need to share. Because maybe they don't know anything. Maybe they aren't getting that information. Maybe they know way more than you thought or expected or want them to know. But it's a good starting point of figuring out what do they already know. And then also being really honest about feelings. So like not really hiding how you're feeling about it and kind of letting them know like I'm feeling this way right now. Yeah, I'm sad or I'm angry. that's, and
I remember him telling me that he was scared, and I was like, that's okay, because I'm really scared too. And he's like, but you're a grown-up. I'm like, grown-ups can be scared too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet boy.
I know.
And then also emphasizing their safety, especially for the younger kids, because I was reading for preschool age, it's still kind of that me mentality.
That makes sense.
Yeah, of like, everything's going to happen to me. It's just me, like, not thinking about the bigger, they don't have the capacity yet to think of the bigger picture. So when they might hear something scary, they automatically are going to go to like that's going to happen to me.
Yeah.
So emphasizing, that you're safe at home with mom and dad, and our job is to protect you, like things like that, so that they're not carrying that burden. And then also considering their play. So just knowing that kids communicate so much through play. A lot of times that's how they're communicating what they're feeling, because they don't have the capacity to communicate what they're feeling. So paying attention to that too, especially if there is high stress situations going on, are they doing different things with their play? And that can give you information too.
I think that's a great tip.
Yeah.
And then just one other thing that I wanted to add, and this is my own personal philosophy, and I think the three of us are on the same page with this, but not everyone listening maybe. I think it's really important to tell your children that they can come to you with any questions or concerns that they may be having about whatever, whether it's a bully in school or something they heard on the radio, or they have a question about how something works, or something happened to one of their friends at school and they don't know how to process it. One thing I've always told my oldest, and it's, knock on wood, thus far it has worked really well, is I've told him that he can ask me anything. I'm always on his side, and I might get mad at him for something that he did, but I will always love him and I will always protect him. And so I think setting that baseline of security and knowing that mom and dad really are always on your side kind of helps ease. Conversations like this tend to happen a lot more naturally than one where maybe that boundary or that baseline has not been well established, or it's been implied instead of just outright spoken.
What are you thinking?
You're awfully quiet over there, Adriana.
It's just a lot. It's just a lot to take in.
It is a lot. This motherhood shit is hard.
That I'm going to homeschool. Probably. I'm just kidding.
When I was researching, I didn't read it, but I saw the title of an article that homeschool is on the rise.
Well, yeah.
I can see why.
Live
State
at
of our
home or
world.
die at school. I don't know.
The other thing I was going to say is, if you're unsure, if you're navigating some sort of tragedy, whether it's mass shootings or something else, and you're unsure about how to communicate with your child, or you're unsure about, you're seeing the way that they're acting out in some way and you're unsure what that means, there's definitely support available. And so seeking support and having those conversations is important. So whether that's, a child mental health professional, or I wrote down specifically here in Austin is the Austin Child Guidance Center. They do provide mental health services for families, but when I was looking at their website, they have free parent workshops on a variety of different topics. So social and behavioral development, bullying, effective parent-child communication, internet safety, test anxiety. So I just thought that was really interesting and valuable, knowing
Absolutely.
that it's a free resource and can give you tools and tips for how to better communicate with your kids around some of these issues.
Also, if your children are in school, they have a guidance counselor there. I would recommend reaching out to the guidance counselor. I know the one at my child's school is fantastic. She had when he started kindergarten, she actually had like I don't remember what it was called, but it was like a drop off and cry session in the library where, on the first day of school, you could drop your child off and then go into the library, and they would talk a lot about the social and emotional learning that your child will be developing. And it was just nice to know that we could go to her, like and she specifically said, like, if you are going through something in your home, whether it's loss of a family member or divorce, job loss, whatever, and your child is starting to act out or behave in ways that are not normal to them, to please let her know, and that she'd be more than happy to, set up some time to kind of work through it so that your child has support at school. So for those of you who may have children in school, utilize those sources as well. Even if the guidance counselor is not able to do anything directly, they can probably provide you with age-appropriate resources and
give you referrals.
Exactly, to private psychologists or counselors if needed, all of that.
A lot of schools actually have social workers on staff.
That's fantastic.
Many of like AISD, I know for sure, has like communities in schools, which typically has case managers and social workers, and they're kind of like the crisis response team for those things. So even if something like if there's a suicide, if a kid commits suicide, they're dealing with that crisis and offering that support to the students and the parents during that process as well. So definitely the school can also be a resource.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Or not, depending on the school.
I know. That's what I'm thinking in my head.
Well, so we put up with our ritzy neighborhood and our asshole neighbors. And I feel confident in saying asshole neighbors because I know that they do not listen to this. But we put up with them for the schools. The schools are fantastic where we are. And I'm grateful for the teachers and the counselors. So sometimes it's worth putting up with jackholes that set off fireworks at 11:30 at night for no fucking reason at all. But that's a podcast for another time.
Well, I think we should end on self-care.
Yes.
So before we even started recording, we did some deep breathing together. And so just again, reminding you, we know this is a heavy topic. We don't have all the answers, but be kind to yourself, give yourself some compassion. And as you're navigating all of this, also making sure that you're attending to your needs as the parent and giving yourself some love and attention as well.
And hug your kids.
Yeah.
I'm going to go home and do that. They're probably going to be asleep, but I'm going to go hug them.
I'm going to go stare at mine.
I know.
I'm going to go sneak in and
I'm going to run that risk
sleeping.
of waking them up, and I'm going to hug them and probably kiss them.
Yeah. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
And you can find links to all of these resources that we mentioned on the notes for this episode. Thank you for listening. And as always, if you have any suggestions for podcast topics or any feedback, we're more than open to it. You can reach us at the Top Knot Squad. It's at Top Knot Squad on Instagram and Facebook. You're welcome to send us a DM or leave us a comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to Top Knot Squad. If you like what you hear, then be sure to click the subscribe button in your podcast app. And while you're there, leave us a review. Want to internet stalk us? Find us on Facebook or Instagram at Top Knot Squad and interact with us. We love making new friends.